the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Shannon.
Present.
Representatives McDonald. Coleman.
Here.
Conlon.
Present.
Farhat. Fitzgerald.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Outman.
Here.
Brock.
Here.
Rupp.
Here, remote, present remote.
Coontz.
Here.
St. Germain. Here. Mr. Chair, you have 12 members present. You do have 1.
Thank you. I need a motion to adopt minutes from our last meeting on February 28th. Representative Fitzgerald makes the motion. Seeing no opposition, the minutes are adopted. So moving to our first order of business, we will be taking testimony, then voting on House Resolution 52. I would like to invite Representative Reggie Miller and Kevin Kraus to come up. Floor is yours.
I introduced this resolution after an incident that took place in my district. On February 24th, the city of Romulus discovered that the Republic Waste injection well would be receiving highly contaminated toxic waste from the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment incident. It was then that emergency management were then made aware, as well as police, fire, and the Western Wayne hazmat teams. I feel that this House resolution is necessary because it calls for transparency and oversight in this process. There is no nationwide standard of notification that involves local officials, and we need to ensure the health and safety of our residents, and that it's first priority. Alongside me today is Kevin Kraus, Director of Community Safety and Development from Romulus, to share with you a bit of information on how this impacts public safety and first responders.
Good morning, legislators of the great state of Michigan. Kevin Kraus, City of Romulus. I'm here before you this morning to speak on behalf of what occurred Friday before last. About 2:30 in the afternoon on a Friday afternoon, we received a phone call from our public liaison representative from Republic Waste. And that liaison likes to kind of equate our relationship as a bad marriage. We understand that there's some consequences of the convenience of life that we live as in America, and those consequences unfortunately landed in our backyard almost 3 decades ago when this injection well was put in place and permitted through EPA and Eagle. This particular afternoon was a courtesy call, and that courtesy call was to tell me that this hazardous material was going to be coming to our community. What was disheartening about this call is it was just that. It was a courtesy. And what I found out through additional conversation was they in fact already had delivered this waste, and it already had transported itself and made its way into our community to the tune of 60 truckloads and 300,000 gallons of contaminated material, which then was, bless you, which then was pushed into the injection well and into the ground, into the Mount Simon Formation underneath Romulus and underneath southeastern Michigan. 20 years in the fire service and as emergency manager, I firmly believe in the concept of if you fail to plan, plan to fail. And there is no way that local jurisdictions that have authority of their police and fire and public safety can plan for incidents involving hazardous materials if we have no notification as to when they're entering our community or traveling through our community. And if in today's day and age in asset tracking and technology, I can order a tie off Amazon and watch it leave the warehouse. They can tell me how many stops it's going to make before it hits my doorstep and send me a photo of that at my doorstep when it hits. We can do the same for hazardous materials. So as a public official and an emergency manager and a fire chief, we can go in and look as when those transports are coming to our community or moving through our community. Now, Romulus is a hub of transportation, air, rail, roadway, pipeline. And we see this move through our facilities all the time. And over my course of 20 years in the service, I've seen multiple what I'll call near misses with these incidents and hazardous materials. They're some of the highest resource taking incidents that I've been on and have by far lasted the longest out of most of the incidents that I've been on throughout my career. And I'm going to tell you just about one quickly. It was middle of summer, 85-degree day, and I got the phone call that says, "Chief, we have a problem." I said, okay, what's that? We lost power at a facility in Romulus after a summer storm. Okay, what's the problem? We have 1,000 gallons, or correct me, 1,000 pounds of solid state rocket fuel sitting in a refrigerated truck that's plugged into a shoreline behind a logistics warehouse in Romulus. If the temperature of this rocket fuel reaches 40 degrees ambient temperature, it'll start to self-ignite. And there's not enough water in the county to put it out, and it's gonna be rapid and it's gonna be ugly. I said, okay, my first question is, what's the temperature at? It was 35 degrees. It was sitting there for almost a week, and I had no idea that it was in my town. I had no idea that it was in my jurisdiction, and I was gonna be the one responsible if it did ignite. Luckily, we got it off the truck, packed it with dry ice, kept it at the temperature, repacked it, got appropriate transportation, and moved it to its final destination in Florida. But these type of incidents occur on a daily basis and sit in our communities on a daily basis, and we have no idea that it's happening. So my ask is that we support this bill, and that as we move forward, not only at a state level, but at a national level, we look at asset tracking as it pertains to hazardous materials that are coming and going through our communities. Thank you.
What we're trying to do here is call for the federal government to establish just simple standards. Look, accidents happen, derailments happen, but we have to eliminate the patchwork notification system that we have in place and make it consistent across the board. This eliminates communication errors, and also it's a public safety issue. And we need to get the information to our first responders as quickly and carefully as we can, so they have the heads up on how to handle any type of emergency situation if the situation calls for. So thank you for hearing us today. I appreciate that. If you have any questions, I'll take those now, along with Mr. Kraus.
Well, thank you for your testimony today. We do have a packed agenda for today, but we do have some time for a few questions here. So we will first start out with Representative Kuntz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to support this. I like the idea. I wanted to bring up my concern. There is safety and anonymity. If we have a centralized database of the shipments and someone wanted to target this, I'm looking at a terrorist attack. If we want to target a specific shipment, now they have one database to go after. So our security could be decreased by doing this. And I just want to bring that concern to your attention.
Yes, and I agree with you, but again, we have to keep everyone safe across the board, and that needs to be addressed with the feds as well. We need priority to be number one, and that's making sure that that database is kept secure. But also those shipments that are coming in need to be secure too. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Farhat.
Thank you, Representative Miller, for taking the lead on this very important issue. Derailments do happen, incidents do happen, but it's important that we maintain a level of inclusion and making sure that our localities are prepared. You know, I wanted to ask that if a similar incident happened in your district, do you believe the locals have access currently to the local necessary information, equipment, or funding to adequately address the situation?
Well, currently, they get information, but it's how and the time on that.
Yeah.
It needs to be quicker and it needs to be consistent. So yeah, they're getting it, but look how you just heard testimony from Mr. Kraus as to how that's happening. So this needs to be improved on. We need to have better measures in place, and we need to push the federal government for that.
I agree, and I look forward to supporting this resolution as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fitzgerald.
My question's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I represent the 25th District just north of Romulus, Wayne, Westland, Canton, Dearborn Heights. I didn't find out about the shipment until it was already in the media, and I have those safety concerns. I share those concerns, so I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. Representative Miller, really appreciate you bringing this issue forward, and Mr. Kraus, thanks for taking the time today. So no question, just thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. It was a team effort that Friday night to get this halted by many, and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell was amazing. And not only Debbie Dingle, you had Warren Evans, and you had many local and state officials working on that alongside myself, and I really appreciated that. I saw the power that we all have when we work together so quickly, and when you have these situations come about, so that was great. Thank you for that, though.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your testimony today. I do have a couple cards to read in. Donald Roach wishes not to speak, supports the bill. From the SMART Union, I should say. B.J. Trumbull from BLET and IBT, Michigan Legislative Board, does not wish to speak, supports the bill. Tim Manotis from the Sierra Club supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Chair, I need a roll call vote, please. Oops, sorry. I need a motion to report with recommendation House Resolution 52. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion it.
So Representative McDonald supports the motion. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Shannon,
Yes.
Representatives McDonald,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Conlon,
Yes.
Barhat,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Outman,
Yes.
Roth,
Yes.
Rupp, Kuntz,
Yes.
St. Germain.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas, no nay, no pass. House Resolution 52 is reported with recommendation.
House Resolution 52 is reported with recommendation. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board.
Okay, so up next, we have a couple presentations. Today, we will have our first presentation from Lance Biamini, who is VP of the Governmental Affairs at the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. Thank you for coming in today. The floor is yours, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Again, my name is Lance Benonimi. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, more commonly known as MITA. MITA represents over 500 companies across the state that build our roads, bridges, underground water and sewers, tunnels, utilities, everything in the heavy construction industry. I've got a couple things that we've heard from other testimonies in the past couple of weeks, but I think they bear repeating just because it's complicated on how we fund our road system in the state of Michigan. Traditionally, you fund roads and bridges throughout the country with user fees. Gas taxes, registration fees, toll roads, which we do not have in Michigan, and some states put some of their sales tax towards their transportation network as well. Our federal gas tax is 18.4 cents per gallon. That has not been increased since 1993. Our state gas tax is 28.6 cents per gallon in Michigan, and our registration fees are based off the value of a vehicle. As I mentioned, we have no toll roads in Michigan. Michigan is one of 5 states across the country that assesses sales tax on its motor fuel, of which very little of that is used for transportation purposes. We believe it's our biggest funding policy problem that we have when it comes to funding our roads and bridges. It artificially inflates our gas tax, and it does not put the money where people in our state believe it should be going. In 2015, we had a road funding package that passed. As signing, Governor then Rick Snyder said it's a good down payment. It was not the full road funding package that is sustainable throughout moving forward. That package included 7.3 cents gas tax increase that got increased in 2017, a 20% registration fee increase across the board, and for the first time in Michigan history, dedicated general fund revenues to transportation, fully implemented $600 million by 2021. And I want to put those dates in perspective. Back in 2011, Governor Rick Snyder then came out with a special message on infrastructure. And in 2011 suggested that we needed $1.2 billion more annually to continue to maintain our roads in 90% good and fair condition. As you can see, by 2021, that 1.2 came into fruition. Over that decade, our roads deteriorated quite a bit. Had we gotten $1.2 billion infused into the system in 2011, we may not be talking about road funding today. In addition to revenues, the 2000 road funding package also includes some reforms and credits. It expanded the homestead property tax credit. It put together the Road Innovations Task Force, which set aside a $100 million lockbox for the department to produce longer-lasting roads, and we have those projects out there right now and are being analyzed. It also expanded the use of road warranties to the local level. In 2016, then Governor Snyder put together a 27-member commission, the 21st Century Infrastructure Commission, which came out with a 188-page report. I encourage all of you to read at least the executive summary of that report. It had 100 different recommendations. For this purpose, it found a need of $2.2 billion more annually over the next 20 years that we need in our transportation network to keep it up at 90% good and fair conditioned. We've had some revenue since 2016, some major ones. The Congress passed the Infrastructure Investments and Job Act, which will see some investments through the year 2026. The governor put together a Rebuilding Michigan program, which is a 4-year bonding program that invests $3.5 billion into our highway network. But where are the revenues from 2027 and beyond? The state needs an equitable, long-term, sustainable road funding solution. A little bit more on the Investments and Job Act. As you can see, before it went into fruition, we were seeing $1.125 billion from Congress, from the feds to Michigan and to our transportation network. For 5 years moving forward from there, we will see about a $460 million increase each year for 5 years. Again, it is short term. And it's also less than that $2.2 billion that the 21st Century Infrastructure Commission suggested that we needed on an annual basis. So we continue to dip down even further. Why is this all important? This is a really, really old chart, and I brought it up because I think it's significant. I used this in a 2013 presentation, and back then it predicted that we would be at 65% poor roads by 2023 if we did nothing. Now, by 2015, because of the road funding package, we have done slightly better. But as you can see with a chart that came out earlier this year in MDOT presentations and House Fiscal, and I believe that Chairman Outman suggested we should all be scared with this chart, and I believe if we do nothing, we are looking at our road systems being below 50% good and fair condition by 2028. Why is it important that we talk about good and fair conditioned roads? In Michigan, back in the 90s, we started the Transportation Asset Management Council, and that was a huge step forward in rating our roads in Michigan. They put together a very accurate report every year with projections on how our pavement conditions will be moving forward. As you can see from this chart right now, we sit about 67% good and fair condition roads and 33% poor condition roads on our federal aid. As you might suspect, our non-federal aid roads or more local roads are even worse condition. Only 55% of those are in good and fair condition and 45% are in poor condition. And we use good and fair condition and poor condition because for several decades, the state has had a goal of bringing its road and bridge system to 90% good and fair conditioned. As you can see with some of these forecasts, we're going in the wrong direction. Here's pavement condition forecasts 2023 to 2033. The poor continue to get up, and the good and fair conditioned roads continue to minimize. Our bridge system is worse than our road system, quite honestly, and that's why we're seeing some extra revenues being put in there from state coffers. Our good conditioned roads, our bridges continue to go down. Our fair conditioned roads are going up, but that's because those good conditioned bridges are slipping into fair condition. And our poor conditioned bridges seem to be flattening out a little bit, hopefully trending in the right way eventually. Our forecasts, again, for our bridge conditions are no much better. We continue to see a decline in the number of good and fair condition and an increase in the number of poor condition bridges. Okay, so why is it all important to have good and fair and poor conditioned roads? Well, because the Transportation Asset Management Council has been in existence for several decades, they have become very good at using asset management to maintain our road system. As you can see on my chart, invest early. You can spend $1 on a good and fair conditioned road and save $6 to $14 on a reconstruction road that has gone to poor condition. And so the more we invest now, the more we will save in the future, and the longer we will continue to have that road last. As I mentioned before, the department the legislature had asked us to look at doing 50-year roads and how would that look with preventative maintenance. And you can see a life cycle here of a 50-year road asset management, which is the goal. So with all of these investments that we saw coming out of Congress, the bonding investments out of the governor, we really wanted a newer study. And so for the past year, we asked public sector consultants to come up with a needs study. As you can see, Michigan Transportation Infrastructure Needs and Funding Solutions. Came up with a needs study as well as some potential solutions on how to come up with that need. And as you can expect, it's much more than $2.2 billion more annually needed that we need to keep our road and bridge system in 90% good and fair condition. The needle has now moved to $3.9 billion. It's obvious that the longer we do nothing, the more this becomes expensive. And if we continue to sit on our hands and wait for continued crises, it will not solve its problem on its own. We have started a campaign several years ago called Fix My State. It's an ongoing educational campaign to bring these numbers to light to the citizens. I think that they can see our poor roads. They can see that their damaged tires and their rims are costing them more and more each year. But I don't think that they fully understand on how we actually pay for our roads. And so research, polling, and focus groups go into that. We have a large coalition of business organizations, labor, tourism, agriculture, transportation, you name it. We were over at the Chamber of Commerce this morning, introducing our report that comes out from public sector consultants. You all have a copy of that report and the executive summary within the folder that we gave you, as well as my card. Feel free to reach out on any of these issues from the report. I encourage you to follow us on fixmystate.org to get up the most recent findings that we have put out there. And again, I've met with several of you and have mentioned this, but if there's ever a time that you have a transportation need or question, you can always feel free to call me. If you have a project going on in your district that you want questions on, we know the right people to ask at least. We might not have the answer right away, but certainly we can point you in the right direction. Feel free to use us as a resource, please. Any other questions that you or the committee may have, Mr. Chairman?
Well, thank you so much for that sobering presentation. It's something honestly that we need to be thinking about. And I will just say, I don't really have a question, but I do have a comment that, you know, a lot of times when we talk about poor roads and the damage they do to our cars, it's an inconvenience, and I'm using that term lightly. We have a broken rim, we have a flat tire, that's an inconvenience. But there are also real safety issues that are involved. And many of us up here have either kids or grandkids that are in our cars on those roads, dodging potholes, you know, doing the same thing, playing defensive driver against somebody who might be doing the same thing. So these are serious safety issues that need to be considered, and you know, we really need to come together and figure out how we solve this problem, because these stats are not good. And you know, I'm hoping that over the next couple of years we can really have you know, meaningful conversations around this issue of road funding. So with that, I will take Representative Roth for the first question.
Lance, thanks for being here. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me the question. And all great things, we have all the money we need. Where are the workers? Are we any better off than we were a couple years ago, Lance?
Yeah.
We talked about this before.
Anytime we talk about increased revenues for roads, the question is, you know, are we going to have the road workers to do the work? And every time we've had an increase that occurs, whether it's large or small, the industry has always stepped up and done that. So the short answer is yes on that. In 2016, we also started developing a lot of programs that are going into the high schools. and going into the junior highs to recruit more people. Community colleges have set up some very unique programs that go towards transportation management and road workers management. So we have definitely increased that workforce. One of the good things about COVID. One of the things about COVID, while some industries were losing employees, these are very good paying jobs, and they're career-long jobs. And so we didn't see an exodus out of we actually saw some people come in from other industries to go work in the trades. So the last thing I will say is our former president would always say that I can either hire someone for a job or I can hire someone for a career. And continued revenue dips and increases that we've seen over the past 10, 15 years are not good for business to hire careers. It's very unstable. And so a consistent revenue source that doesn't continue to go up and down will allow our members to employ those employees and make the investments into their safety training and into their equipment training. We'll make those investments into the more modern equipment to build better and more efficiently. I think one last thing I will say about employees, and I think this gets a little bit construed, let's just arbitrarily say we double our transportation budget tomorrow. We do not need double the amount of employees. It's not a correlation one-on-one. And some of these larger fixes that we are doing, the money is more in the materials. It's not necessarily more in the workers. So,
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative Roth. And I'll just comment a little bit about that also as far as getting workers to do the job that we need them to do. Something that we can tackle on this committee, and something that we started over the past actually couple terms, was road worker safety. We need to make this job more desirable for people to want to get into this field that is so desperately needed. And so that's something that we can do, and something I hope to focus on this committee is road worker safety, making the job more desirable. With that, thank you, Representative Roth, Minority Vice Chair Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Lance, thank you for being here. I just want to kind of reinforce something you said. And to Representative Roth's credit, I totally understand where he's coming from. There is an issue of just throwing a ton of money into our transportation budget without having the labor to back it up. I mean, all you do is artificially inflate the cost of these projects without any sort of value. So I understand that, but you made a really good point here. And that is the fact that we don't have a new dedicated additional stream of revenue to our roads and infrastructure. So it's really hard for you and these road construction companies to gear up and hire a bunch of people if there's a lot of uncertainty looming there and there's not a dedicated revenue stream. A lot of these one-time monies that we allocate, I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but in the long run, we got to look at a new dedicated revenue source potentially. And so my question to you is, so initially we thought we needed $2 billion in additional revenue. Per the report you just mentioned, it's looking closer to $4 billion. That's a pretty large increase than what we even thought. And it doesn't necessarily surprise me, but my question to you is, and I mentioned this, I believe it was last week's committee hearing, and that is, I believe it's going to take a little bit of existing and new revenue streams, and I was curious to get your thoughts on that.
We certainly think that we need new revenues. We don't believe that the state budget can handle an increase of this size, let alone a $2 billion increase. Where that new revenue comes from, we don't think it's a silver bullet. We think that every option has to be on the table, and what's most palatable to the legislature and the public to get to where we need to be. And it's a quality of life question too. Do we want our roads at 67 good and fair conditioned, or do we want our roads at 90% good and fair conditioned? We have that opportunity, and we want to pay for that opportunity. It's a tough question, but I think it's throughout the next several months. I think some of these options will come out, and we at MITA will be testing different scenarios with focus groups and seeing, no one's ever polled on tolling, in my opinion. So I don't know how the state and the public believes in tolling and whether they agree with it or not. So those conversations are going to continue.
Certainly, and I totally agree with you. I mean, there is no one silver bullet to fix this issue. I mean, we've been neglecting our infrastructure for a long time, and it's not just exclusive to Michigan; it's nationwide. We've been neglecting our infrastructure, but we know it's been plaguing our state for a couple of decades now. And if we don't address this issue, I don't see businesses fleeing to Michigan. I don't see our state reaching full economic potential if we don't have good infrastructure. And so I agree. I think all options should be on the table. I think we should take a look at tolling. We should take a look at vehicle miles traveled. All these other options and proposals that are available, I think we should keep them on the table. But again, I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Representative Conlon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lance, for this very informative presentation. So, yes, I didn't hear you mention, electric vehicles, but obviously that's something we're all very aware of is going to also change our funding model going forward. And so, to his point, I was wondering how much you're going to be polling around mileage. And somebody had mentioned to me maybe we need some kind of incentives to get a mileage study going of drivers who would participate in a mileage study to see like what that would even look like to start to investigate these other kind of models.
Yeah, there's no question that because more fuel-efficient vehicles and electrifying our fleets are dropping our revenues down for our road and bridge network, that we have to look at something different. And there are 18 or 19 other states that have already put in some sort of vehicle miles traveled pilot program or just implemented it. And there's 2 or 3 regions throughout the country that have done as well. And so Michigan's a little bit behind the 8 ball here on this one. And we believe we need to at least understand it and to start looking at it immediately. We agree. We believe that, regardless of the fuel source, the amount of damage you're putting on the road and the number of times that you're doing that should be equate to how much you pay for that road.
Representative Frott.
I want to build off that point you just made about regardless of the emission type. Have we looked at vehicle weight at all, or weight of the actual freight that's being transported on our roads? I know Michigan leads is a leader in allowing some of the most generous weights on our roads. Is there any research behind what the sweet spot is for the weight of a vehicle compared to the damage it does?
In terms of the damage it does, I'm not sure. There are several studies that will show that in Michigan, we actually, for truck weights, we actually base it on their per axle weight. So it spreads the weight out even further rather than gross weight. And there's a great study out of U of M that will suggest that puts less damage to the road than over gross weight with less axles on it. So I think while we allow some of the heaviest weights on our roads right now, that fleet is about 3 to 4% of our trucks are carrying over that 82,000 pound weight. So it's a very small number of trucks that are doing that. And again, we spread it out. You can only be 19,000 pounds per axle. So you spread it out over more axles, and you should be doing less damage to the road. We're open to any discussions, and we will say that trucking is one of the highest costs right now in our in road building, and truckers are really high demand. There's a huge shortage. So, adding more trucks to the road. I remember former Speaker Jace Bolger, who used to drive the 94 corridor, when they talked about eliminating the heavier trucks within Michigan, he didn't want to see double the amount of roads going on his commute to 94. And that's potentially what you could see, is just more trucks on the road. And we don't like the trucks on the road now. So lowering the weights will put more trucks on the road and exacerbate our shortage that we already have in the drivers.
Thank you.
That's a very good point. Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Biananimi, for being here today. I have one question for you on this graph here, kind of showing these intervention points. First part of this question is this with current technology, so no change in necessarily the materials or the process by which we are installing these roads? Right. Okay. With that kind of proactive management then, these intervention points that we see here, and remind me, CPM?
Capital Preventative Maintenance.
Thank you. Are those subject to review? Are those still, would there still be a subjective determination saying this is not necessarily needed in, what is this here, 2029, but might be able to hold until 2031 before that CPM takes place? I guess that's kind of my curiosity, is where and how these points are determined, which I guess that still then leads its question to the point of, well, if we've delayed this for 2, 4, 6, 10 years, are we still seeing the same benefit if we're delaying those intervention points?
That's a tough question to answer, but the engineers might be able to answer that a little bit better afterwards. But absolutely, there's a review process of when they decide to put a rehab on or capital preventative maintenance measure on a road, and then gets bid out to the qualified bidders. In terms of spreading it out, I think you're just going to see the road get worse the longer you go. So that end of the 10, 20 years where we put a layover, it may only last 3 years, right? It's not going to last the longer-term layover because your base has already been broken up enough. So I would suspect, although the engineers may correct me, that the longer you wait to do that preventative maintenance, the worse the road gets.
With this graph, too, I find it interesting because if you extend this 1 year out, you can put another, red ladder on this, right, showing the life. So you'd have to build this twice unless we are intervening at these, with these CPMs and the rehabilitative measures.
If you really deepen the weeds on our report, you'll see that if we do nothing and we just build the road and then we let it die and then we build it again, it's way more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Lance. I really appreciate you coming in and giving us your presentation. Next up, we have a presentation by the American Council of Engineering Companies. Giving the presentation is ACEC Executive Director Ron Brenke. Come on up, Ron. And thank you so much for taking the time to come before our committee today.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I have with me my current president of ACEC Michigan, Jason Knoll. So he's going to do a couple pieces of our presentation as well. So just a little bit about our organization. So we are actually a national federation. We have offices in every state in the U.S. So each state has a member organization office. ACEC represents about 5,525 firms, over 550,000 professionals nationwide. We're also very active, not just at the state level, but at the national level. We have a large PAC and a Minuteman Fund that help us tackle tough issues that come our way in our industry. So a little bit about ACEC. ACEC Michigan, specifically, we have 105 member firms here in the state. They range in size from 2 or 3 people to some firms are actually national firms that work both throughout the U.S. and abroad. Our organization was created really to help with the business side of engineering. So there's several professional technical associations out there for engineers, but our organization is really focused on the business side. So we want to help our members become better business people so they can offer better services for their clients. A little bit about the built environment too. Some people kind of get confused thinking that we represent all engineers. Our engineering firms work on Michigan's infrastructure. So whether it's roads and bridges or dams, water, wastewater facilities, buildings, anything you can think of that is man-made and built in infrastructure, that is what our members focus on. And they have licensed professionals within their firms, and they actually have to seal their drawings by licensed professionals. So that kind of sets us apart from some of the other engineering companies.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to introduce our board of directors. I'm privileged to lead ACEC Michigan this year. We have an outstanding board. They provide valued input and oversight to a number of issues that affect our industry. We have 15 board members. They represent small firms, disadvantaged companies, state and national firms from all over Michigan. Our board has expertise in a number of disciplines, including transportation, buildings, geotechnical, surveying, water, wastewater. Our board members can serve 2 3-year terms and longer if you're in a leadership position. And we typically have 1 or 2 board members, new board members every year, so we get fresh perspectives every year. So Ron is responsible for our day-to-day leadership as executive director, as he's been doing a great job for 20 years. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ron, and he'll talk about some of our activities.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we try to get to Washington at least once a year to meet with our Michigan congressional delegation. I can tell you our organization fought real hard for the IIJA funding. Infrastructure is really what we do. Our engineers are out there inspecting it, they're designing it, and so we have a great perspective on infrastructure, and we make sure we let Washington know how important it is. Some thoughts here we've talked about is, workforce development. Within our organization, these are a picture of our emerging leaders. Last year, we've done this for about 15 years now, but we're trying to train our young engineers to become better business people. In engineering school, they teach you how to be an engineer, but they don't necessarily teach you how to run a business. And so helping them learn about financial management and risk management and things like that is a key priority. We have a shortage of engineers, just like a lot of the industries do in Michigan. So we've been working, partnering with different groups to help bring more people into our industry. The Construction Science Expo is in its 12th year. We do this jointly with the construction trade organizations, with Michigan Department of Transportation and others. All these kids, we have 1,000 kids from Detroit Public Schools every year come to this seminar. It's a hands-on expo, and it really lets them understand that there's a career, possibly a career out there for them in the construction industry. So we're competing for the same folks that everybody else is. We're actually going to start a Construction Science Expo this year in Lansing at Impression 5 Museum in October. So we're looking forward to bringing in some Lansing public school kids. So as Jason mentioned, we are not just involved with roads and transportation. We're involved with the entire built environment. This kind of slide shows all the different sectors that our members work in. So it's not just, like I mentioned, the stuff above ground. It's a lot of the stuff below ground. And really, there's similar concerns with our infrastructure below ground because you can't see it. Everyone expects to have clean drinking water and clean lakes and streams, but that just doesn't happen without proper infrastructure. So I'll talk a little later about some of the conditions of that. And I apologize. I should have talked to Lance before we met, because I see he has some of the same slides I do, which I'll go through really quickly. But I apologize for the duplication. So I'm going to have Jason. He's going to talk about a couple of. I thought it'd be nice to share with you a couple of projects that are going on in Michigan or have been completed in Michigan. So, Jason?
Yeah. So as Ron mentioned, the firms in our organization, we do work in a wide range of infrastructure sectors. So just wanted to highlight a few of those projects. So the picture on the left, that's from the Michigan Accelerated Rail Project. So that project was consisted of rail improvements on the Chicago to Detroit line, but the work actually occurred in Michigan between Dearborn and Kalamazoo. So the project had a goal to reduce travel time and improve on-time performance. So a lot of work included in that. It included replacement of 9 miles of track, geometric improvements to realign 75 miles of curves to support speeds up to 110 miles an hour for passenger rail, reconstruction of 140 at-grade crossings for safety and reliability, and it modernized and replaced the entire signal system. The project to the right, so that is runway 3 left, 21 right at Metro Airport. So that runway was constructed back in the 1950s, and It was really in need of a full-depth reconstruction over many years of rehabilitation. Some interesting characteristics on that runway too. 8,500-foot-long runway, and it's DTW's primary departure runway. Taxiway M, that was also part of the project. That was included in the project. That's the main taxiway between the Evans and McNamara terminals. So yeah, it encompassed 700 acres, 419,000 square yards of concrete. The work was accelerated, completed in 17 months, and the paving was actually completed in one construction season with some advanced techniques. So our ACEC firms, they also supported restoration of the Four Lakes area in the Midland and Gladwin counties due to the flooding that occurred associated with the Edenville and Sanford dams. The area was surveyed before and after the storm using some of the most advanced survey techniques out there. Survey data point clouds were generated. They used drones, all kinds of different things, large and small boats, kayaks, even manned aircraft. So these type of advanced survey techniques, they allowed people to do daily monitoring, and they assisted responders and construction crews to the latest conditions while the restoration was occurring. So the picture you're looking at is actually a point cloud of survey points. So you can kind of get an idea of like how dense the data gathering is out there. That's a bunch of survey points out there that created a picture. Go to the next one, Ron. Bless you. So this is a drone photo of the US 131 M179 single point interchange. So this is on the west side of the state. This is an alternative to a traditional diamond interchange. The diamond interchanges require a lot more space. This type of interchange improves efficiency, safety, and it's also a fully functional interchange on a much smaller footprint. So as you can imagine, much less impact on surrounding properties, much less environmental impact. The project also used an innovative design concept for document delivery called Project PDF. It was the first interchange project that have used this, the first in the Grand Rapids MDOT office that used this. So the designers were able to capture the entire project in a PDF file that became part of the contract documents and eliminated hundreds of plan sheets. So definitely an innovation there. So I guess to summarize, this is only a sampling of the projects our organization has planned and designed. Again, we want you to know that ACEC is also a resource for your committee for a wide range of infrastructure issues going forward. So I'll turn it back to Ron.
Great partner with the state organization and try to bring these innovative solutions to our infrastructure problems here in Michigan. And we do have some problems here in Michigan. This is a report completed by the American Society of Civil Engineers, a report card that they put out every 4 to 5 years. They update this, and they will be updating it this year. It should be coming out in May. But as you can see, it evaluates 13 different categories of infrastructure. It also it has grades for each one of those, so it's pretty simple to understand. These grades are based on a lot of different factors: capacity, safety, resilience, future funding to repair the facilities, and all of these are completed by civil engineers throughout Michigan. So I wanted just to share that with you. Our overall grade is a D+, which I don't think anyone that has kids and they came home with a D+ would be too pleased. So there's a reason for this. In this chart, I just wanted to share. I actually was fortunate enough to serve on the 21st Century Infrastructure Commission that was mentioned by Lance, and we did a lot of data gathering. This is one piece of that information from that report, and it just shows how really Michigan has not invested in our infrastructure compared to our states that are similar to us with climate and size over the years. So it took a while for us to get to where we are, and it's because we just have not made this a priority. This is another graph similar to what Lance showed. This was actually done by our MDOT director, was showed at our most recent event. But I think, as Lance mentioned, we've got a lot of work to do to reverse this curve. this curve it's amazing, how predictive these things have been and how accurate they've been in their predictions over the years. So I think this data can be really trusted. Similar slide that Lance showed you. I just wanted to highlight the one on the right is non-federal aid eligible roads, and you can see they're in a lot worse shape than the federal aid roads are. I also want to highlight that this is just on the right side. This wasn't data collected for all the non-federal aid roads. It was a good portion of them, but it is a pretty representative sample. I think the chart on the left is much more expansive in the data that they collected for that. I think they covered 96% of the roads in Michigan. Bridges, as was mentioned earlier, are also a big part of our transportation system. As you can see, we've lost ground from 2018 to 2021. Even though there has been more funding put into bridges, we are still losing ground. By 2020 or 2033, 19% of our bridges are predicted to be in severe or very poor condition, which a lot of them have to be closed. Again, there's a reason for this. We have not funded these properly, and you can see as how we compare with other states. I get asked this question a lot. How do we compare with Ohio or Indiana? And honestly, we don't compare very well. And if you see those dotted lines, those are the national average on conditions throughout the state or throughout the country. And again, Michigan is almost double in some of these categories. So water infrastructure is very similar. As I mentioned, these things are below the ground, so you don't see them, so you don't always think about them. This is some data that was also from the commission report regarding the pollution of our streams and water due to overflows of our sewers. Obviously, beaches being closed, 25% of beaches being closed, it gets back to the thing that Lance mentioned is the quality of life in Michigan for our residents and trying to attract people to us to live and work here. The last thing I want to touch on is just a couple of legislative initiatives, and we, ACEC has a legislative day every year. I think many of you had appointments last week with our members, not all of you, but one of the things that we are working to make sure becomes a staple here in Michigan is qualifications-based selection for the procurement of engineering and architectural services. In order to allow the engineers to bring in innovative ideas into projects and to bring in new technology, we have to be given the opportunity to do that. QBS allows that. A low bid system does not. A low bid system tells you to give us your least amount of price to do the project. That means use your least qualified people and spend the least amount of time putting together your plans and your estimates. And that usually you'll see a increase in construction costs and operation costs over time because you don't get the best solution. So QBS is really important, to our organization, and we've got some great studies that show that it actually it saves the state a lot of money down the road. In fact, 45 other states have already required QBS for the procurement of engineering services for their state agencies. Michigan has not yet, and so we're going to be working to introduce some legislation that will do that. The other piece that we want to just quickly talk about is just cleaning up some of the language as it pertains to surveys. Some of the statutes have not kept up with practices in the technology that we're using today. So there will be a bill introduced later this session that talks about just cleaning up the statute and getting our statutes up to how we're actually practicing in the field and using the technology that we have to document the surveys and file them with the Register of Deeds. So that's all we had for today. I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. And thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I did actually have a question with regard to this slide here with the grading system of the different infrastructure issues. Could you talk a little bit, and I'm bringing in my former educator, teacher hat, kids in school. Could you talk more about the D+ rating for schools? What does that mean? Their facilities are dangerous, or what's going on there?
Yeah, it is facilities. It is the infrastructure part of it. And, you know, schools, just like our other infrastructure, they haven't had funding for capital improvements. So, you know, whether it's their water, I know I went to a small school, my kids went to a small school, and they didn't drink the water there because the water coming out of the fountain was disgusting. Yep. So it's the water quality, it's the actual school structure themselves, you know, not upgrading to keep up with new technology that actually can help them learn faster and better. So, yeah, it's the infrastructure part of it. It's not in any way grading. I knew that's where I wanted you to go. Was because that's completely unacceptable. Yes.
A D+, and we're sending our kids to potentially what is an unsafe environment. And everything else is, well, I guess there's a couple other Ds, but one of the other Ds is drinking water. I mean, we got to do better by our kids, and so that's my comment on that. So thank you for your answer.
Absolutely.
Representative Kuntz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for coming today. I don't mean to debate semantics, but when you talk about sealing drawings, as an engineer, I understand that. Would you elaborate on that so people understand what it means to seal a drawing?
Yeah. Do you want to take that one? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically a professional engineer. So yeah, basically a professional engineer, and Ron and I are both PEs, has to be in responsible charge of a project. And that means supervising other people's CAD drafters, junior engineers, surveyors. That PE is responsible for the entire project. So when that project comes to an end and the final drawings are done, they seal the drawing, which means they put their stamp on the drawing, they sign over the stamp, and those drawings are issued. And that's a requirement of the profession, and a requirement for working for public agencies, that they're sealed by a professional engineer.
And therefore, they're responsible for anything that goes wrong with that as well. So they have to make sure they're, we have really good professional liability insurance to make sure that if anything goes wrong, that we're going to make sure it is covered.
Thank you. Representative Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I saw on your slideshow about the dams was one of the big ones. Elaborate on that, because obviously our dams in the state are well past prime. Many of them 100 years old. So what's your thought on dam removal, dam replacement? The architects and engineers to look at this and see what the issue is. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that, please.
Well, I think the collapse of the recent dam is really a wake-up call, to the condition of some of our dams. A lot of these dams are privately owned, which also make it difficult for enforcement of repairs and things to the dams. But these were put in place a long time ago, and sometimes the owners of the dams have abandoned the dams. There has been quite a good effort to remove dams that are no longer being used for any useful purpose, and I think it's been good for the streams and that part of it too. But yeah, this continues to be an issue that we have to pay attention to, because obviously, people below those dams are at risk of serious consequences if they fail. So I don't know. Do you have anything else to add on dams?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a road or a bridge. I mean, it requires requires maintenance, it requires inspections, and for an asset to last, you got to do all those things.
Wow, with consumers talking about replacing or removing a lot of dams, it may be an opportunity also.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I just want to make one last comment. I have another question. Yes, Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. One question I had was regarding the ASCE report card grading. This was clearly a 2018 report card. Clearly, a lot has happened during that time. Even today, we heard news that various airports in our state had been provided with federal funds for terminal upgrades. Do we expect to see that this has maybe turned a corner from our overall D+ GPA, as they call it. But do we expect that this is improved? Do we expect that the some of the ambitious nature of the work that we've done over the last 4 years has helped to improve that?
Thanks for your question. So the civil engineers have been spending the last year going through the data, analyzing the current conditions. That report is going to be released in May, as I understand it. Although I think you will see a little bit of an increase in the quality of some of these, I don't think it's going to be substantial. It took a long time to get where we're at, and it takes a little while longer to get out of, to make these huge improvements over time. So I think you're going to see some improvement, but quite frankly, what scares us is the kind of the cliff that's coming, with transportation funding specifically. What are we going to do in 26, 27 and beyond? Because these influxes of money into our system have been well needed, and they have helped things. But as Lance mentioned, we really need to have something sustainable over time, because it took a long time to get things into poor condition, and as you can see, when you drive through these projects, it takes a long time to rebuild all this stuff. So, yes, I think you'll see a little improvement, but it's not going to be. It might get us out of the D's. I'm not sure, but stay tuned.
I don't see any other questions, but I did, as I said, wanted to make one last comment. So thank you so much for both the presentations today. I really do appreciate it. It's very eye-opening. And to be honest with you, if some of the members, if the members of this committee don't have a little bit of tossing and turning this evening, then you weren't listening. There are serious issues that we're facing here in Michigan. And I'll refer you to this one, this slide. It's page 7, the 13th slide. When it looks at infrastructure funding, and this incomparable to comparable Great Lakes states, it's embarrassing. So that's all I have. Seeing that there are no other questions, thank you once again for your presentation. I do appreciate it. And there are no absent members. And seeing that there's no other business before the Transportation Committee, I called the no other business before the Transportation Committee. The committee is adjourned.